What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Can Avengers Secret Wars and Avengers Kang Dynasty compare to Infinity War and Endgame? Will it be anywhere near as hype, or is it just going to be a pale imitation of what came before? This is a question that's on a lot of Marvel fans' minds, and it's something I really want to dig in on this video, which is also going to serve as the part 2 in my Road to the MCU Secret Wars video series, which, by the way, the first part of that video series we released right after Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness came out, because to me, that really did solidify that Secret Wars was the next destination for the MCU. And in this video, I am going to make the case that I believe Avengers Kang's Dynasty and Secret Wars will indeed be just as big, if not bigger, than the hype, than the craziness that was Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War. But before we get into all of that, it is absolutely fair to point out that many Marvel fans have doubts, and there's a whole bunch of good reasons to feel this way. I mean, Infinity War and Endgame was something unlike anything else I've seen in modern day pop culture, right? Where the movie itself, like Infinity War, was so big, so hyped up, and felt just like such an incredible thing for fans everywhere that it brought in so many more people. Like, there's a reason that Endgame is such a high grossing film, even higher than Infinity War. And I do believe that that 1-2 shot of movies in Infinity War and Endgame sort of solidified Marvel in the MCU as something way bigger than just another pop culture franchise IP or comic book adaptation. This was insane. I mean, the amount of people that were following the news, hyped up about Endgame, curious as to see how this could actually be resolved, was absolutely fantastic. And I believe that's actually part of the problem when we're in Phase 4 now, because I feel like a lot of people got brought into the Marvel fandom because of Infinity War and Endgame, and in a post-Endgame MCU, it has absolutely not felt the same. And I think the issues with Phase 4 have been pretty well documented. A lot of different people, commentators, and just fans online have discussed this. There are absolutely things going on in Phase 4 that do not line up in the sense of quality, or even in just the sense of loving the characters that we did in the Infinity Saga with Phase 4. Like, there's just a few rough patches, and because you have so many more projects with the inclusion of Disney Plus and the Disney Plus shows, there's just so much more to try to keep track of, and there's definitely not as much of a cohesive vision for how this is all being tied together towards an end point. I mean, the lack of connective tissue and the lack of setup for the multiverse itself and for the next 2 Avengers movies is absolutely a part of the big disconnect for a lot of Marvel fans right now with Phase 4. And on top of that, I do think there's something to be said for the seriousness of Infinity War and Endgame. There are absolutely jokes and gags, and you've got Smart Hulk and you've got Fat Thor and different things like that, but by and large, the tone of Infinity War and Endgame is dark. Like, Thanos whoops everybody's butt in the first movie. It's absolutely incredible. He succeeds at his goal, snaps out half the life in the universe. And then in Endgame, it's sort of like this post-apocalyptic, post-snap world where the world is just reeling and things are really, really bad for most people. And to go from something like that where it just felt so high stakes and the tone was just so dark and it's just crazy, and then to go from that into these other films within Phase 4 that for the most part have had a pretty comedic and light tone, has not really felt the same. And it hasn't left audiences with any sort of sense of security that as we head towards the next 2 Avenger movies, that they will be anything like what they were before. And on top of that, you have lost major, awesome, fan favorite Marvel characters. Iron Man, such a legacy. People absolutely loved Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, and he literally did carry a lot of the Infinity Saga on his freaking back. But on top of that, Chris Evans, so damn good. And like, Civil War is such a good film because it really pits those 2 fan favorite characters against each other. And so when you don't have those 2 characters really at the forefront of Marvel, and you don't have that much of a direction, and the tone feels slightly different. I mean, I think, yeah, there's a lot of reasons as to why fans are sort of questioning Phase 4 and have their doubts that the next two Avengers movies could even come close to what we got with Infinity War and Endgame. But I actually believe that they will be as hyped. And one of the main reasons is because I believe they've been planning for this the entire time. Back in late 2018, insiders started to tease out the idea of Secret Wars being the next big event for Marvel Studios. I believe in 2019, Charles Murphy came out and said, more or less, that Secret Wars would be the next big event. And a lot of people at Marvel Studios, like when I was talking about this in 2019, it was because I went to New York Comic Con, okay? And at New York Comic Con, I literally talked to some people that worked for Marvel, and they said, yes, this sort of, battle world, alternate versions of characters, variants, this was something that was absolutely coming to Marvel Studios, and it was all to set up Secret Wars. And I touch on this a lot in like the first video that I did in this series, right? Talking about the road to the MCU Secret Wars, I talked about how it was pretty freaking obvious that they've been planning Secret Wars for a long, long time. And so, when you get this announcement at San Diego Comic-Con this past summer, a lot of people were like, whoa, 3 years away, 2 Avengers movies within 6 freaking months? Like, dude, they're just pulling this out because they need the hype and they know the MCU is on shaky ground. That's just absolutely untrue. They've been planning this for just as long as they were fine-tuning and planning for Infinity War and Endgame. I mean, the Infinity Gauntlet saga is one of the most epic stories ever told in comics. It's super recognizable, the Gauntlet and the Gems, a big, big deal in Marvel Comics. And so around the time of the Avengers movie, but really around the time of Age of Ultron, you see Feige and his lieutenants really starting to develop the ideas of how to set up the MCU version of those movies. And even that didn't really hit perfect right away. A lot of people did not like Age of Ultron, and they felt like some of the stuff they were trying to push into Age of Ultron, particularly the stuff about the gems, because that vision Thor has is one of the things that kicks off all the fan speculation as we move forward. At the time, people were like, yo, I don't know about this movie. This isn't as good as Avengers. I don't know about the MCU. And yet, as time went on, the sort of, flag polling and signposting for this thing that was coming got even cooler. It got more tight. And in those last couple of years leading right up to Infinity War, man, you had so much incredible content that was just supporting this awesome idea of things to come with Thanos and Thanos himself and the Gauntlet and the Infinity Stones and all these dope Marvel things just planted in so many nice seeds. And I think people just forget that. Like, there's this recency bias where we don't understand that Age of Ultron was the first movie that set up Infinity War, like, in a really solidified way. And most people didn't even like that movie and felt like the MCU at that time was trying to find itself. And I know a bunch of people are going to say, like, I'm a fanboy for trying to defend Marvel's Phase 4, but damn it, I am a fanboy and I am going to defend Marvel's Phase 4 because although I can absolutely agree that it's missing the mark in some places, it's not nailing it and it's definitely not as tight as what the MCU was in that Phase 3 Endgame time. I would argue that when you think about the context of the crazy health crisis of 2020 that threw all sorts of things into chaos, the fact that there was this massive breakup between Sony and Marvel in late 2019, which caused them to shuffle things around, and you have the tragic loss of Chadwick Boseman, who I believe Feige was going to heavily lean on in the MCU moving forward. You put all of that into context and you also consider the fact that they were planning Secret Wars right then and there. I think a lot of what's going on in Phase 4 is completely understandable. Yes, there were some films that are a little bit lackluster. Most of all for me, Love and Thunder. And I know people have problems with Multiverse of Madness, but again, Multiverse of Madness was a freaking movie that had to be rewritten, gutted, and changed up multiple times because of things going on with Sony and scheduling. Like, originally that movie was supposed to come out before Spider-Man No Way Home, and America Chavez was going to be in that movie first in the Spider-Man movie, and then they friggin' shuffle that around. So now they have to introduce America in Multiverse of Madness movie, and even a lot of the cameos and the ideas and the things they wanted to do for Multiverse of Madness get changed around as well because of scheduling and because every other studio and actor and producer was dealing with all the same bullcrap that Marvel was. And just like Age of Ultron wasn't the greatest and the MCU around that time period wasn't the best, but it did get better, I think you're going to see the same thing with the MCU Phase 4. I mean, we're pretty much out of the woods as far as projects that were affected by 2020 and all the different shutdowns and things like that. So we should be getting into just a more clean production for Marvel Studios. I also believe that they figured out their arrangement with Sony and they have a big plan and they have confidence in announcing things and making, product, whether it be one of the Disney Plus shows or a movie that sets up Spider-Man or his role in the MCU moving forward. And so I believe starting with Wakanda Forever, you're going to start to see a tonal shift into things being a little bit more serious. And you're also going to see a lot more connective tissue that's going to lead us to the Secret Wars Kang Dynasty thing. Consider this, guys. Phase 5 is going to begin with Ant-Man Quantumania, which Kang is officially announced as the villain. I mean, Kang the Conqueror was announced as Jonathan Majors before we saw him in Loki at a investor call December 10th of, I believe, 2019 again, or maybe it was 2020, talking about how he's going to be the main villain of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. And from what we've heard, just from the trailer that's been leaked out online, Kang the Conqueror talking about how he's had something stolen from him, talking about how he's killed Avengers before, this like really creepy thing going on with him and the whole time thing. Like, this is going to definitely kick off a lot of threads and theories and speculation on how the MCU is going to head towards Kang's Dynasty and Secret Wars. We're also going to be treated to Loki Season 2, another tentpole keystone piece of content that will spell out for us how we are going to arrive at Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. I mean, Loki Season 1 sets up a lot of different ideas with the concept of the limbo planet, which could have been Battle World. The TVA talking about the multiversal war that had come before. Kang himself talking about fighting other multiversal versions of himself and defeating all the different variants of Kang and establishing the sacred timeline to secure the end of time. Seems like that's happening after a secret war on Battleworld. So basically, I think a lot of the issues that people have with Phase 4 currently are going to go away when we go into Phase 5 and then Phase 6 as we get really, really freaking close to Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. That, coupled with the fact that this has been planned for a long, long time, make me think that they're going to absolutely hit all the different marks that they need to make these movies as good as Endgame and Infinity War. But the reason that Secret Wars will eclipse Endgame, it will make more money than Endgame, it will be more hype than Endgame, and we will be right back into that cozy experience where the whole world's getting excited for a film, is because of what Secret Wars promises to be from a film perspective. And this promise was set up with Spider-Man No Way Home and with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I don't think many people can deny that Spider-Man No Way Home is one of the best Marvel movies ever made and probably the crown jewel of the Marvel Phase 4 projects. It was absolutely incredible, and what it did was kind of unbelievable. It established these other versions of Spider-Man in Tom Holland's world via the multiverse in a way that didn't feel heavy-handed, in a way that still allowed agency for the actual Tom Holland Spider-Man character, and that actually enriched that character's story arc while also satisfying nostalgic fans of the other versions of those characters. And Multiverse of Madness does a similar thing, bringing back Professor X, bringing back Anson Mount as Black Bolt, establishing John Krasinski as Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, having Haley Atwell come back and play a multiversal version of Peggy Carter as Captain Carter. That was some really, really hyped up fan service. And I know that the narrative around Multiverse of Madness was that the rumors were way crazier than what we got in the film. And that's absolutely true. But if you go back to what those rumors were and what they show us about what Feige's trying to do with not only that film, but what he's really really got his sights on for Secret Wars, it's kind of mind-blowing. Like, this is coming from very reliable insiders. And, I know, some people just don't believe any insiders or scoopers, but I think a lot of you that have been following me for some time know that we try to take this seriously, and we try to differentiate between just like giant freaking robot that'll throw a million rumors at the wall and people like Casey Walsh or My Time to Shine Hello, who have a proven track record of having inside information. And what I'm telling you here, what you really need to focus in on is the fact that a lot of very reliable people talked about crazy things that Feige was trying to do in Multiverse of Madness, like bringing Hugh Jackman Wolverine back, like having a Tom Cruise Iron Man in the film, the possibility of Toby or Andrew also showing up in that movie. There were rumors of Magneto and Fassbender Magneto, and they've even commented on what the scenes with that character were going to be like. But just stop for a second and recognize that the reason many of you were upset with Multiverse of Madness is probably going to end up being the reason that you'll be so freaking hyped up and excited about Avengers Secret Wars. Because the word is from, again, those very reliable insiders that a Hugh Jackman dude, he said no to Multiverse of Madness, but he's open to coming back for Secret Wars. Toby and Andrew, very open to coming back for Secret Wars. Magneto actors coming back for Secret Wars. Ben Affleck as freaking Daredevil coming back for Secret Wars, and on and on and on. And so what Secret Wars is going to be is a crazy culmination of all these different Marvel characters from different franchises of Marvel movies. And I strongly feel that the cherry on top will be Robert Downey Jr. coming back as Iron Man, Chris Evans returning as Captain America, Scarlett Johansson coming back as freaking Black Widow, and having the OG group of Avengers that we all fell in love with during the Infinity Saga also hanging out with all of these different crazy Marvel characters that we love from other franchises. It's going to be insane. And I think it's going to be functionally better in the MCU as we get towards it. And the payoff for that movie will just bring things to the table that Endgame just didn't have the ability to do. And so, yes, I still believe that Avengers Secret Wars and that Avengers Kang Dynasty will be just as big and probably bigger than Infinity War and Endgame. And if you're really hyped up and you still want to watch more, why not check out this, the first video of our series, The Road to the MCU Secret Wars, that we dropped right after Multiverse of Madness. Ton of great information in there as well. It's right on the screen for you right now, so why not give it a click?